Oh, hi, Sandra.
Hi,
Thank you
David.
for agreeing to do this talk for the CSM FACE Summit, the first FACE Summit that's been done in collaboration with CSM. Thank you for taking the time to do this. Um, I'm David Kappo. Just going to introduce myself. I'm David Kappo. I am a tutor at CSM. I run the graduate diploma in fashion at CSM, and I'm also final year tutor on BA, and I'm also a tutor at the Royal College of Art. I'm just going to describe what I look like. I'm of Nigerian Irish heritage, so I have lovely brown skin. My hair, I've got curly hair, which is supposed to be dyed a metallic grey, but it looks kind of a bit washed out and it's a bit ash blondie. I'm wearing a Chanel print jacket, and I'm just looking in on the screen to see what I'm wearing. And I'm wearing a fluorescent pink running top and a yellow printed dress. Sandra, can you describe what you look like?
Yes, I just wanted to add that David has glasses
Oh,
also
yes, I
on.
do. Yeah, I've got a
Uh,
big pair of Tom Ford tortoiseshell frame specs. Thank you, Sandra, for pointing that out.
no worries. Hi, I'm Sandra. I am Angolan. I have also brown skin. I'm wearing a black scarf on my head. My hair is pulled back. I have a turtleneck, fleece turtleneck on. And I'm in my studio, so the space around me is full of materials, and there's tables, sewing machines, and I have earrings that match the beads on my scarf back. Um, yes.
Thank you, Sandra. Yeah, so let's start the conversation. I mean, it's weird because I know you, Sandra. So a lot of the things that I'm going to be asking you, I kind of already know what some of the answers are. Um, but I mean, I know you as a fashion student. You know, you were one of my final year students here at CSM. Can't remember, was it a couple of years ago you graduated?
Mm-hmm.
So I know you as a fashion student, and also as well at the Royal College, because you're doing your MA at the Royal in the fashion department there, and I see you there as well. So I know you as a fashion student, but you're not really a fashion student in the traditional sense. Um, yeah, so I'm interested. How would you describe what you do?
I'm an interdisciplinary artist, so I work with I borrow the skill set and the characteristics of materials and mediums towards things that aren't perhaps originally what those materials and mediums would sort of like deliver or do. I work with film, with wood, with concrete, with fabric, and uh, I also very much understand my practice as a practice of a fashion practitioner, thinking about fashion as uh, a subject, a form of study that investigates things in close proximity with the body. And when I started studying fashion, I was quite convinced that those things would always be garments and dresses and jackets. And as my BA progressed, I realized that the city is a thing that is in close proximity with the body. The dust, the beer, the temperature, all of these things can change a body and alter the state of affairs of a body, just like a dress could, or high heels could, or sneakers could. So that's what I do.
I mean, it was really interesting for me, Sandra, because I'd seen you around college and we'd had conversation, but I'd never worked with you until your final year. So for me, it was really exciting to see the work that you wanted to produce. I mean, it was really ambitious work. I mean, you were the year that kind of got hit by the COVID So your teaching had to change. But whilst when I first met you and we were on site, I remember you wanted, I mean, you basically wanted to curate a whole museum full of artifacts, you know, which was so exciting to see. And I could, from that moment, I could tell, oh, okay, we haven't got your usual, let's, you know, make 6 looks and stick them on skinny girls to walk up and down to bad music. You know, you think in a very different and ambitious way, and that was really exciting for me to be part of as one of your tutors. I mean, have you got, is it easy for you to access what you did on your BA? Because
Yeah.
I mean, I mentioned before, you were the year that got, you know, we're in the pandemic, so you went from being working on site to then having to work from home, and it was a really interesting experience for you having to work at home. And I'll let you talk about what happened and how your ideas of the brick, home, colonization, the roof, neighbors, you know, all of this stuff, yeah, really kind of influenced what you did, but also how it made you think about it in a different way. Is that okay? Can you find those?
Yes, I was earlier. I had the window was actually showing. I might just have to show to share my whole screen.
Yeah, that's fine.
Can you see, David?
I can see myself, which is quite frightening.
Okay. Let me see. I wonder if I'm still stop sharing. Okay, I will try again.
Can I explain a bit about what, I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but yeah, okay, you've got it. Because it was the whole, I mean, what I found really interesting, Sandra, was when we were having the discussions about colonization and what happened for you and your experience of having to produce this work on your in lockdown on your BA. So if you can talk about that a bit, it'd be great.
Yes. So I guess that like the beginning of second year was really, really challenging for me. I always tell this story that, for the first 4 months in most of the tutorials, you ask me where the work was, and the work was on the table. And it was like a process of really trying to understand what that even meant. And I remember like actually feeling really like, the work is here, these are like all of the plans for the work, but actually realizing that the plans for the work weren't yet the work, and that I really had to take risks and to start attempting to make all of these things that I was proposing. The work was called an Angolan archive, as you know, and the intention was to create an assemblage of objects, artifacts, pieces of sound and video, like different things that actually help me understand my perspective and kind of the oral tradition perspective, not collective, but actually individual, regarding Angolan history and contemporary life. So when in March, and I never forget, it was the 19th of March, when we had to collect all of our things from the studios, it felt like a real interruption. I remember going home and actually crying a lot, because I finally understood what it meant, that where is your work? It meant that I really had to go into the workshops. That I had to, constantly be thinking, producing, reacting at the scale of the plans and at the scale of the ambition that I propose in tutorials. so yeah, like I guess like everyone, I spent like the first few weeks of lockdown just really thinking about what I could do and how. And I had, pieces of MDF in my living room, and I had a column, kind of attempt of a column in my room, and all of the garments and toiles, they were like, I remember we were stepping on them in the house because we didn't have space to like put them, and they had to be somewhere, so they were on the floor. It's quite interesting to then see that those same works being exhibited. Like for instance, in one of the works, the presidential suit was exhibited at the South London Gallery, and I remember thinking this was on the kitchen floor. We were stepping on it, cooking next to it, but it was what we had at the time. So I remember spending a long time like having coffee and reading outside. There was this little porch space like in the back of the flat in North London, and I kept looking at this roof, this space that was, belonged to the neighbor next door, who I didn't know who they were, and the house was like, under construction. So with COVID, the construction stopped, and one day I got the courage to move in. I didn't ask anyone. I moved in. I took all of my tools. I cleaned the space. I put everything that I found that in one corner, and I was able to order some wood because some of those kind of heavy duty suppliers, they were, especially in North London, they were open. They were still like, doing some services, and I ordered some wood in like the cheapest beams they had on the website, and I started working. And that's really became my studio. That space, it became my workshop. It became my subject eventually, because actually the work was so much reflecting also upon the processes of decolonization and the process of decoloniality, sort of the mental aspect of decolonization that takes so much longer than the physical exit. That moving into this space really felt like a sort of a counter act to all of that, because I was moving into a space that didn't belong to me without being authorized. And if it was for me, I would have covered all of the bricks and I would have altered all of the space. But which right did I have to do that? So the image that we see here, I actually don't see it right now, but the image that we see here is a still from the film that towards the end of the project was one of the outcomes for the submission, and was one of the outcomes for the project. And also the wooden artifacts, the ladder, the frames, the column. I wonder, here is another image. They were made in the roof, and they were made over, I think at the time, the first time was like 6 weeks that I spent in the roof towards submission, and then I ended up staying 2 more weeks because the construction workers came back eventually, and they continued refurbishing the flat. So I basically it became a part of their team in a way. Like I remember the owners asked me to leave, and I was like, okay, I will leave on Monday, and I really didn't leave. On Monday, I woke up at 8:30. I made like tea for me, for the builders. I came outside and I said, listen, I need to be here. I really need to do this fashion degree. And they were like, what are you doing? But anyway, they didn't think I would harm anyone, so they let me stay. And it was a very interesting process, because I remember at some point they were like, I don't know, they would at lunchtime, one person would go to the shop and buy lunch for everyone. And James, which was like the head of the head engineer, he was like, so Sandra, what do you want from Tesco's? And I was like, James, I live here. I'm like, what do you mean? And he was like, yeah, but everyone's having lunch, and when I would arrive like a bit late, because maybe I was on Zoom or doing something inside the house, they would be like, so why are you late? So it was ended up being feeling in a way like being in the studio, but just with completely different peers, different conversations as well.
I mean, I know that I mean, it was for, I mean, I think for all the students at that time, it was a strange time. But I think for you, what was really good was that how you related your past thinking to your then current situation and how you were able to articulate that within the work that you were producing, and also all of the kind of background work that went with it, the whole idea of you colonizing this space which you felt you didn't have a right to, but still did it anyway. I think it was, it was interesting conversation. And I used to really love those Zooms, that we would have, when you would tell us like the latest installment, of the Roof Saga, and with all the people surrounding you as well. I was really excited, Sandra, when I first got to work with you. I know that when we're in the fight, when I was a student, I only ever had one black tutor, and that was for a really tiny project, for like a 3-week project. And it was with Joe Casely Hayford. He came in when I was in my second year, and he did a short project with us. And for me, it felt really different for me having a black tutor. And I don't know whether because in my head, it was like they kind of knew me in a way that other tutors didn't. And there was nuances in conversation that felt different to the other tutors that I may have had. I mean, for you, how did it change the work, your work, how you kind of, your process of work or the ideas of your work? Did that change in any way having a black tutor?
I think, David, that also, I guess also for me, like the first time that I had a black tutor was in final year, and it was you. And I guess like it's this moment where we think we are almost kind of reassembling everything we learned into delivering. And for me, it felt like I was back in foundation, because it's like a completely new cycle actually started. And that cycle had a lot to do with, and we were speaking about this earlier, like almost this idea of trust, and extremely high expectations, but connected with trust and connected with process and strategy. So I think that if before I almost had to always set the standard alone or myself, suddenly you push the bar so high that I was like, okay, it's that there must be a reason, and this familiarity, I believe it's a lot related with this reason behind the fact that from the tutor side, and this is my perception, like from the tutor side, there is an obligation for the student not only to deliver but to excel, because it's two of us in the room. And that in my year was me and Shanti, and before I changed to print, I was the only black student in FDM. And we always joke, FDM was left without a black student, and now print has to, like, it's so imbalanced. And because it was one student in every sort of group, and sort of class and year, so it did change everything. It changed, I remember thinking the whole time that you were almost too harsh on me. And then I would go to lunch with my friends, and they would be like, yeah, and David mentioned that we should totally be also like thinking about this, like really ambitious things. He mentioned your work and he mentioned the woodwork. I was like, how did he mention that? He just broke me 10 minutes ago. Like, how is that even possible?
Sandra, darling, I'm harsh on all the students.
No, I know. No, I know. Yeah, I know, but it's also about how we take it, and we can take the support, the advice, the conversations, like really far or not. And in different moments also of studying, I took I took the feedback really far or not. So I think totally like this, maybe this like system, again, from my perception, system of care that I believe that, you know, it's for all students, but it's how I'm receiving that this is coming my way, because I am finally seeing, and it's not just for me, it was also more than, you know, like having you as a final year tutor, having you as a tutor that is a Black person. It was like, you know, it was the head of, you know, of our year. It was the head of our course. It wasn't, you know, a 2 seconds come in and come out project. There was a perception from us that, wait, this course has like what, 11 people. Everyone says it's so hard to get in. Everyone, you know, and then our tutor is David. I mean, he must be incredible. And this is also problematic because, you know, you can be incredible, but you don't must be incredible, if you see what I mean. But obviously that is the case. And yeah, I think it's always, I remember at some point having a tutor that was Irish, and I thought that that was probably the last time that I had a tutor that was Irish and was white, that I had a tutor that could resonate with the feeling of having been attacked in some level. I remember having like really deep conversations with this tutor, and I was like, I mean, at least I have an Irish tutor, you know, that there is some sense of understanding in this level. And then rebuilding, having you as a tutor, yeah, it just makes all of the difference, because we don't even, it's so molded that we don't even expect that to happen, you know. It was like, yeah, it's a beautiful surprise. And then many times I cried as well, but I'm so grateful.
But I think that the notion of visibility is really important. You know, you were saying for you to have someone that came in and is not just a kind of come in, do a quick hit and leave. It's having someone that is in a position, you know, a recognized position of importance, for want of a better word. But I think for students to be able to see that there are, you know, that a course, a college, a university takes Black tutors, Black academics, Black creatives seriously, and that we can occupy positions of power or influence, I think is important, you know, from a student perspective, but also from other members of staff. I think it's really important that we are visible. And it's really weird, because I think that when you were saying this kind of level of trust, but also, I can't remember how you phrased it. It was almost like not wanting to let the tutor down, because there's this other level, this kind of tacit, unspoken, almost level of responsibility. But it works the other way as well. You know, it's, you know, I care for all, you know what I'm like, I care for everyone, and everyone gets the same kind of the harsh Kappo treatment. But there is this extra bit, you know, that if I'm honest, that I do feel and want for students that are Black or brown, because I know that not every journey is easy. I know that there are challenges, obstacles. It's not always, you know, this gilded path that we can tread. So I do feel this extra level of responsibility and duty of care. You know, again, you know, that's really, I think we can't shy away from that. But a lot of the time, you know, I've worked with students, or even if they're not my students, they might seek me out, you know, because, and when I'm talking about Black or brown students that might seek me out because there's been something that has happened, something that they're feeling, something they're not feeling, they've been misunderstood. You know, I kind of become this kind of beacon, you know, for students to come and get support from. You know, which on one hand, it's great that I'm there to be able to do it, but there should be more of us. It should be kind of normal that we have Black students, that we have Black tutors, you know, and that's because even now, when I walk through the studio, if I see a Black student, you know, there's kind of like a bit of a nod, even if they're not my student, because it's still such a rare kind of occurrence. I mean, hopefully it's getting better, but it is still quite rare. Yeah, I was looking at your CV, Sandra, on sandrapoulson.com. You know, your journey, your educational and your physical journey, you know, it's really impressive. Can you just share that with us?
Yes. I'll just open here.
Because when did you leave Angola?
I left in 2013. Yeah, I finished high school in 2013, and I moved to Lisbon. I went to study fashion at the School of Architecture in Lisbon. Let me see. Can you see it now, David?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. I don't. I'm trying to remember if this is really up to date. But yeah. So I finished high school.
You haven't put the Royal College on there, I noticed. I was going to email you to update it.
It's tricky. I don't know if it's like relevant to like speak about it, but it's tricky because it's. I mean, it's this. There are different opportunities and situations within like me practicing. Let's say outside of the course that sometimes could almost benefit from it not being visible that I'm at the MA, and then sometimes it's the exact opposite. So you know, it's something that I thought, you know, I always mention it to people, but maybe it's something that I'm working on still. Yeah.
And also, Sandra, I mean, what are the, you know, with your journey, I mean, what educationally, have there been challenges?
I mean, yeah, like of course, like I think that first of all, like when I left Luanda, and even when I left Lisbon to London, I didn't speak any English. Also because I don't come from sort of a Commonwealth country. I come from Angola, and moving to London, I moved to London without ever having been in London. I just moved to London, and I started studying English. But I was already in a second year of a fashion degree in Portugal at the School of Architecture. So I kind of come and think, after studying English, this will be super straightforward, because guess what? I already was on second year. And I remember at the time I applied for a bunch of BAs at LCF, and I didn't get into any of them. I remember at my interview, my interviewer said, "You applied for like 4 different courses, so like what's going on in here?" And I was like, "Yeah, I feel like I could, all of them could work for me." And she was like, "Okay, maybe none of them would work for you." So straight to the foundation, which was like super important because it was just experimentation, and I had maybe a little bit of experience because I had been on a BA before, but at the same time I just wanted to try things and to like, you know, I started my investigations in foundation. I remember one of my first projects was about things that I collected at the beach in Rwanda, and there was this reoccurring pattern of combs at the beach, combs that people lost. They would go with the waves, and then they would come back when, like, at some point with the moon and but everything, the tides. So I realized that there was like more comms than it should be. You know, why would there be so many comms? So then the investigation and the project was a lot about this need for maintaining the hair even when we are at the beach and when we leave the beach, because there is this sense of pride, and it's integral to Black and brown people's bodies, that the hair is this framework that kind of delivers the individual in many ways. So it kind of those kind of conversations started there in foundation. But then when I got to CSM, I actually had no idea what CSM was. You know, I remember hearing my peers in foundation being like, okay, so we're applying for the school. I remember even some people wouldn't say that they applied just in case they don't get in. And I didn't apply because I was sure I would never get in. When I realized how serious it was, you know, some people came all the way from their countries to apply to CSM, and the foundation was a stepping stone. And at the time I had a tutor, Giles, that said, what, you didn't apply? Like, out of my class, you're going to do UCAS right now, like literally, David, your predecessor, like who just came before you. And Giles said, you know, you're going to apply now. I was like, but the deadline is gone. Like, now it's past the deadline. And he was like, I don't care, just go do the UCAS. And I got in to then realize kind of the mythological figure that the school was, and the fact that I was going to continue being in an education system that I was likely to be the only Black person in the room, that, you know, most of my crits people were going to cry or tell me at the end that they're really sorry about a certain situation.
So Sandra, so before arriving here, you had already had that conversation with yourself and kind of prepared yourself for the I suppose the reality that you could be the only Black person in the room.
I mean, from foundation, I realized that was very likely, because I remember in my foundation there was 3 Black students. I was one of them, and the other, if I'm not wrong, the other 2 people dropped out very quickly, and that was already telling me something, because I was actually looking forward to be friends with them, and I was like always looking, and then I was like, have you seen that? No, actually, he's not coming anymore. Like, he dropped out, and then this other person.
And that's I think that's something else that, you know, needs to be highlighted, because even when we do have students that gain places, you know, the proportion of Black students that drop out is disproportionately high than their white counterparts. You know, so again, there's something within education, with the systems as they are, that we're not holding on to our Black students. So that's, you know, that's problematic as well. And you found that when you're on your foundation course with those 2 other classmates that just kind of left for whatever reason.
Yeah, and it's always like not really understanding why people leave, because the layers behind dropping out are so much deeper than usually the course is able to kind of understand or reach out or respond to, which is something that I also saw at St. Martin's. You know, 2 things. One was like knowing that every time I met like a Black student in CSM, this person is, as a practitioner, as a student, incredible. It's like I never met someone, a Black student, and thought, oh, maybe they, you know, they're kind of alrighty. No, it was like you are either incredible or you're not there in the first place. And then also just kind of puts the expectations and the bar so high because there is this overcompensation, there is the doing more work, there is the working longer hours, there is the kind of often this feeling of how to say, like feeling like you don't really belong to that space, nah? The imposter
Syndrome.
syndrome.
Yeah.
And the imposter syndrome then also continues with
Yeah. These are the conversations that, you know, as part of FACE, you know, as academics, it's a big conversation that we all have. You know, this imposter syndrome kind of stays with people, or can stay with people throughout their lives. And we have to kind of unpick and unpack why that is. And also, as you're saying, that there's this this pressure that we put on ourselves that we have to be better. We've got, you know, as you said, got to work longer. The work's got to, you've got to work harder. You have to be better. You know, to it's almost for that validation, but almost as well, it's kind of like being better, work longer, harder, to kind of be at the same point almost as everyone else. You know, or that's what we feel has to happen, you know, in order for that validation, you know, from others to be there, you know. And again, that's something that is problematic. You know, why can't we just be and do, you know, in our own way and in our own time? But, you know, as we know, this isn't the case. Something that I wanted to talk to you about, Sandra, is the kind of, I mean, I went to see the exhibition that you had. Is it a VO gallery?
VO curations, yeah.
You know, and that was the first time that I'd physically seen your work, because previously it would have been on screen. And so it was the first time that I'd physically seen your work. And I was just completely blown away by what you had produced. But then also you did a Q&A afterwards, and the ideas behind your work, you know, how you kind of touched upon it when you mentioned about going to the beach and the combs and the gathering of these artifacts. And it's just the way that you see your environment, the way that you interpret things that other people may not take notice of, like the dust, for example, and the way that you explained why the dust in Luanda was so important. And yeah, come on, I want you to share, because I was just you know, but it's how you bring in all those notions of storytelling, of home, of artifacts, of culture, cultural difference. You know, and you told, and there was a story that you told. I mean, the story about the dust, I thought was just so beautiful, how you explained it. But then also as well, that in another room you had the flowers, that you had made these flowers in these window boxes, and you explained the importance of those. And you know, it was you are the most amazing storyteller through your artifacts. You know, in that moment, in that hour or whatever it was that I attended the exhibition and talk, I had learnt so much about Angola, about Luanda, about your family, about the peoples. It was just incredible, you know. And yeah, I want you to share that. I want you to share some stuff from it. How do you go about gathering those? No, first of all, how do you decide what the stories are that you want to tell? How do you decide, you know, what are those important stories culturally, historically, politically that you want to tell?
Mm-hmm. Thank you, David. Like it's so nice to hear. Just you, I don't know, you also you seeing the work and how you felt and how you kind of then feel about like the stories. Like I remember in our tutorials, me like speaking for like 20 minutes nonstop, and you've been like, okay, I got it. You can tell the stories. There's the work, and and then me thinking that I was like, oh, maybe David just doesn't want to hear the story. It wasn't. It's just I needed to have both things.
Yeah.
I feel like I can tell stories forever, because I'm so interested in digging those memories. And very often, I mean, my research, even for final year, my research is very much starts with like being in Rwanda and having loads of documentation, like literally filming, recording, documenting everything, conversations, taking notes, and that's why like that famous number of like the 3,000 artifacts. When I came in, remember, like I came in with like so many images, and you're like, okay, but what is in this image that you're looking at, so we can kind of look at it together. And often, often there are objects and things that are more reoccurrent, things that I'm already thinking about for a long time, but I don't really know why. I guess like just really mundane and common household items and situations that are so common that become invisible to the city, become invisible to me. And sometimes people ask me, what does it influence, I guess, like being the body being located in London, and then actually being working and reflecting upon things, the conversations, realities that are more like kind of geographically pinned and existing in Angola. And it does, it allows me to almost like not see the things that I normalized for long enough to then when I go back to seeing them, I'm like, wait, this, the dust is employing people. What's happening here? And the stories, they come from, I guess, like me continuously digging memories and asking questions to my parents and documenting what they say, but in a way that is very like, I miss loads of bits in the between, but then other bits come in, and at
Show
some
us
point
some
I just
stuff, Sandra. Show us some stuff. Come on.
there
Yeah.
I am telling the stories.
Yeah, come on.
Let me find this again. Okay. View.
But have you ever worked, Sandra? Has your work ever not been about Angola?
No, no. In a way, even like I feel like it's about like almost Angola and something that is happening. The case studies are like something that it's happening or happened in Rwanda, but at the same time, the work, I mean, that's almost like the micro thing. And then the macro is when actually the work materializes and I start having the conversations with people from all around the world. And I realize that these stories and these actions, that they are happening in so many other places, I just kind of didn't know. So the work becomes like that starting point for those conversations. Can you see, David, now
Yes, see it.
yeah? Yeah,
Yes.
so I guess this is like the image of the wall, the work muru. It's like a 2 meter by 2 meter by 5 meter concrete on plywood work. And I guess economy of the dust like starts with me sort of going back to Luanda, and re-observing things that I saw. For instance, when I was researching for an Angolan archive and when I was spending time there, just kind of looking through the images I kind of gathered and the videos, and realizing that I have been actually re-documenting not the same things, but comparable situations. And one of the things I realized was walking in downtown Luanda. We have all of the kind of, mostly in downtown, you have either like brand new buildings that are like glass and you can see yourself in the mirror, or Portuguese colonial architecture. But the moment that you leave downtown Luanda and going to the markets with my friends, going to look for materials, going to I guess just see things and meet people, I realized that outside of downtown Luanda, the most naturalized form of architecture is actually the unfinished. And the unfinished, perhaps this wall is like referencing that unfinished, is referencing the exposed concrete, a wall, a house that hasn't been painted, that maybe still has the metal beams like hanging at the top, this idea, this hope of the second floor, of continuing to build it, but also this like super like really really common element, which are the gates. I call them gates, but I guess people call them metal railings or gates, I guess different things. But these protections from they initially protections from the outside, but then they actually in a way become thresholds between the outside and the inside, and they become tunnels for aspiration and for seeing what is possible maybe behind. So these are like installation views of the show in May, and there is this kind of diptych between a corridor of gates, which would possibly or likely find in a formally built building. For instance, like the building that I grew up was built in the 50s, and I usually say that at every opportunity it has a gate. You can't really enter the second floor where I grew up in without opening the gate and having that key, and then to enter the flat there's another gate. So these thresholds of aspiration in a way between environments that are formally built and environments that are built by people or self-built. But the fact that the gates language actually exists in both of those environments. And so there's a kind of a corridor that is like a wall to gate corridor, and then a finished to unfinished, and then a full concrete corridor, which is the one on the left side. This is a close-up of the gates, and this is then another view just before getting to the wall. So the work operates a bit as this, I feel like all of the elements as kind of semiotic indicators perhaps of class and social mobility to some extent, because in the same way that someone that lives in a house that is allegedly unfinished. Again, what does the unfinished mean? People live within the unfinished, people live within the uninhabitable, and so it's all about perspective. Maybe seeing from the outside or seeing from this geography, we think that this wall is actually not fully done, or this house is not fully done, but actually if people can live within those spaces, the uninhabitable becomes a methodology, and the work becomes interested in that. I always think about, being at the roof, for instance, like during COVID and doing the final project of BA, being in that roof and not having access to all of the workshops, it became a methodology for me, because I couldn't buy the materials. I couldn't, source pretty much anything. So what do I have, and how do I make the best out of that? And I remember actually a conversation we had, David, where I remember saying to you, but now that I don't have anything, I'm just gonna do something that it's like whatever. I'm just gonna do something to finish the course. And you said, would you ever, like in normal circumstances, would you ever do something just to get it done? And I was like, no. And you're like, so use the nothing you have on you and do the best you could ever. And I was like, okay, that sounds like ambitious, but it's something that I like keep with me. It's this idea, and it's actually a methodology of how to make the best out of whatever is accessible to you. So then these are installation views of the plants and the other gates, which actually look like the entrance to our flat, and the plants themselves, which my mom used to have at the entrance of the flat, loads of them. So me and my sister used to be called the girls from the plants by the boys in the building next door, which I never really understood until I I was curious. Well, I was always very curious to go up to the other floors of our building to realize my mom was the only person that had plants. And why was that? You know, in a building where time and water were like such scarce resources, in Luanda the asymmetries are so high that in a flat next to each other, people can have completely different socioeconomic abilities and access to resources as well. And the plants come to add this conversation of the dust in that sense. And then here, like, these are the two still lives, which are really how this project starts being framed. So being in Luanda and investigating, documenting, I realized that there are loads of people that are responding to the asymmetries of the city. So the fact that the city is like fully paved in one area and then, you know, unpaved or paved by the dust in the road, literally as you kind of turn left or turn right. So the unpaved and the paved are next to each other everywhere in the pockets of the city. And in these transitions between the unpaved and the paved, people go through bodily practices to remove the traces of dust. So there are shoe polishers, there are people that are, actually just sweeping the dust in the street, even though it goes back and then it kind of spreads everywhere again. People that are washing car tires, literally, like, cars are washed everywhere in the world, but car tires are washed in Rwanda because no one wants to be traced back to a neighborhood that is unpaved. And this goes back to historical Luanda, to, downtown Luanda where white Portuguese settlers lived, and then the outskirts where Black Angolans lived. And when Black Angolans came to the center to work in the morning, we had to attempt to enter the center as kind of detached from the dust neighborhoods as possible, to be able to continue having this mobility. So these two moments, I call them naturezas mortas. They are like still lives, just like the still lives with the bowl, the fruits, the bananas, the flowers. They capture a microsecond of an action that hopefully or likely will change. And then this is the other one, which is the washing of the flip-flops, which I saw for the first time in January this year in Luanda. I've never seen people literally washing feet and flip-flops of women that are, again, going from an unpaved, and in this case muddy road because of the rain, to enter the concrete, the asphalt city. So yeah, I guess there's another one.
There's such powerful images and such powerful stories. I'm aware of the time, Sandra, and
Yeah.
something that, because I think we've only got a few minutes left, but something that I want to ask you is, what next? Because I know you're at the Royal, your final year, you're at the Royal College on fashion, even though the presentation that you did, that I saw on Friday, was a voting booth. And I did vote in it. But what next for you? What does the future hold? What's the ambition? What's the dream?
I feel like, interesting things happening. A lot of them are like non-disclosure agreements, but hopefully, like, soon they will be, public sooner or later. But yeah, I'm working like on a couple commissions. One of the big challenges for me now, I think, it's to really understand how not to detach what I'm doing for those projects from my course, because my course is really, it's like this critical space and the most valuable space I have to continue learning and pushing, rather than kind of working with formulas or things that I already know. So to be so fair, like, despite all of the projects, my biggest challenge and the space where, yeah, I have felt more comfortable, even like this past week being at uni every day, was like yeah, it was just kind of really a safe space, and also seeing you there and seeing my peers. I mean, I didn't even mention this, but in the first week when me and my peers kind of met, we thought, and this to say my Black peers, we thought that we were all from different courses because we'd never seen as many Black students in one room. We're like, so which course are you? It's so true. And then we realized we were all in the same EN course. We were like, no way, how did they do this? Like, that's great. And I mean, it's not 20 of us, you know, it's like 6 but
No.
it's already, yeah.
It's enough to make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm very interested to see what the future holds for you, Sandra. And I know that you've been into CSM to teach. You came in to do a talk, didn't you, for the first years? You know, that went down brilliantly. Everyone was saying how powerful you are as a communicator, sharer of information, and just a great presence. So yeah, so maybe that's something that you can do later on.
I'm waiting.
As everything else. Sandra, this has been brilliant. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your work and your thoughts. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, David.
And I'll see you at college.
See you at college. Thank you, David.
Okay, darling. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.